Today, we are once again talking about this fake Michael Jordan red PMG because we have an update from the buyer directly. As you guys will know, I've been working quite closely with him in the last 5 or 6 days to understand this issue a little bit further. And, the outcome is maybe not as good as what people were hoping for. And it probably raises some question marks around the relationships between graders, eBay, and us as customers. And I want to use this as a talking point to go through that after I go through the update itself. Now, if you're not sure what video I'm talking about or what this red PMG actually is, you can watch it in this video from 5 days ago, where I talk about the fact that Beckett basically graded this card as a PMG, red PMG, in an altered slab. This thing was listed on eBay. The likes of Adam Gray saw it, did some reels on Instagram raising some concerns. I saw those and decided to make an eBay video. Now, these inconsistencies are pretty blatant. They very much indicate that the card is fake and somebody colored in a base card with a red marker and fooled BGS, or so it seems. Now, what I mentioned in that video is the sale ended for like $23,000 USD. So it looked like somebody had shill bid, just put Michael Jordan's jersey number in there, and it was a shill bid because people realized that was fake. Now, what transpired in the 12 to 24 hours after this video came out was that the buyer messaged me and said, you know what, this isn't fake. I actually paid for it and I'm very, very concerned. And he's been having conversations with myself and Adam, like I said in my weekly news video the other day, because basically it's about to go through eBay's authenticity guarantee program, and he's really concerned about what it means for the money he spent. And the reason why he's concerned is because, as I mentioned a few times, Beckett don't give a guarantee. So if he's bought this card, eBay pass it, Beckett say they still stand by it, or Beckett say we made a mistake, he's not guaranteed to get his $23,000 back, which is quite a concerning situation and position to be in, obviously. Now, we were waiting to see what eBay would do, and the expectation was that eBay would pass it because typically when they do their guarantee check, they just make sure that the slab is genuine because they inspect the slab for tampering and then just compare it back to the description of the listing itself. And because the listing looked like it was accurately defined, it was a BGS precious metal gem card, altered, all that sort of stuff, eBay basically came through and passed it. And that is the first update that I want to give you guys today. And you can sort of see Adam here is obviously been given the same information as myself. We've been talking today, Adam and I, and he's given a few updates. And it's quite, a concerning situation because it passed eBay's authentication guarantee. Like Adam does say, this doesn't mean that the card is real. He doesn't think it is, like myself. I also think it's fake. It just means that eBay confirmed the card was graded by Beckett and listed correctly. He basically said it also means that it appears the buyer might be stuck with a $2 card having paid $23,000 for it. And what Adam talks to on the next page is actually something he and I discussed a little bit today about, what sort of needs to happen from here on outwards, because the concern is going to be, right, let's say this card is fake. We've basically got a situation where the seller could keep their money, having successfully scammed someone, because Beckett might pay out this buyer if they do in fact confirm they themselves made a mistake, which would be odd because Beckett don't typically do that kind of thing. Now, as you can sort of see here, this is where Adam and I agree on what should happen next. So like I said, we discussed this earlier today. He says, in my opinion, in this situation, Beckett and eBay need to work together. The card should be removed from the slab if it's determined that BGS have in fact made a mistake. The seller should get a couple $100 of credit for the hassle, and then the buyer should be refunded on eBay. So basically the card ends up back in the seller's hands or destroyed. The buyer on eBay gets, refunded, and the seller doesn't get to keep the funds, right? Basically mitigating all chances of this risk happening again. Because if, BGS were to send it back in the slab, this guy could maybe move it at a card show or something along those lines. It's sort of where things need to happen when it comes to stuff like this. You need these companies to be communicating with each other and working together and all that kind of stuff. But if we end up in a situation where, Beckett say, we've made a mistake, we're going to, pay you out on market value. So they give the money back to the buyer, and then the seller gets to keep the $23,000 because eBay don't do anything because it's outside of their control. That's a really scary situation to be in, and sort of setting a precedent, setting a standard for people to maybe try and do scams like this, all the time. And maybe this stuff was already happening on the, down low, but this would be a fairly public example of how to go about scams like this, which would be quite disappointing, obviously. And then it's something that we sort of don't want to see happen consistently. And we really need eBay to be working with these graders, because it's unacceptable that you could have that gap where a buyer can get their money back, which is fantastic, but then also the seller be rewarded for their scam. That's completely unacceptable in my opinion. And we really need to hope that this stuff doesn't go down that path, right? So that was the first update I wanted to quickly give you. The second update is the buyer himself actually put out a second video, which I referenced. I referenced his first one in my video yesterday, but he's given a few updates that, it passed eBay's authentication, like I just mentioned, but also that BGS have reached out to him and said they'll take a look at the slab again. And the reason why they're going to do that is because Collect Media basically got in touch with him. I think Adam Gray put them together, basically connected them, and they got a hold of BGS and were able to get this guy in communication with him, which I think is, super important, because BGS here have an opportunity to do the right thing if they've made a mistake. But I'm sort of really curious to see what's going to happen next, because as you guys will know, the regulars on the channel will know, I've talked about Beckett many times. I've been in touch with him many times about Patrick Mahomes swapped rookie patch auto 1-of-1s that were, laundry tag cards that were, changed to manufacturer, the Nike swoosh tags, all that kind of stuff. We've had this really big soccer syndicate issue with their slabs where you had millions of dollars of fake stickers going to BGS slabs, and BGS are basically saying, we've not made a mistake, right? They don't want to accept the liability. So that's still, very much a likely outcome in this particular instance. They could turn around to say to this guy, well, we've not made a mistake. So what does it mean for Ben then? He has to basically try and get a refund through eBay, but that's going to be really difficult because it passed authenticity guarantee, and Beckett are going to stand by their work. So that's the path that goes down. That's really, really disappointing. And I'm hoping, through the involvement of myself, Adam Gray, and also Collect Media, we can maybe get some pressure on Beckett to actually take this situation seriously, which I think they're going to kind of try and do, right? Because this would be a pretty significant error on their part if they try and ignore and accept that it's not a problem, right? They're basically saying, we've done our job. If they say that, that's quite concerning, because there's a lot of inconsistencies with this card right now that are raising significant red flags, as I did mention, in my 2 videos talking about this card. So like I said, I just wanted to give you guys those 2 updates because I think it's important to talk about this as the updates are coming from the buyer. I'm still communicating quite closely with him, as is Adam, from my understanding, just to try and get some insight as to what's happening here. I think we've done all we can right now, where we've basically managed to get it to the forefront of the hobby's mind for the most part. It's got Collect involved now. You've got Beckett's attention. And if we need to, we can also communicate with eBay if, the outcome from Beckett is not promising. Now, there are some question marks about, this process still, and who to believe and what to believe and all that kind of stuff, because there's some really confusing elements with the seller themselves. But, you like to think that Beckett would, handle all that stuff, efficiently and effectively. But maybe that's wishful thinking. Now, at the start of the video and throughout some of the comments I just made, you would have heard me talk about, what does this mean for the relationship long-term of graders, eBay, and us as customers? And this is once again highlighted a topic I've talked to many times on this channel about what, these grades actually mean and what kind of integrity they're actually providing us as customers within this industry, because they're sort of hiding behind the fact that they will grade a card for you and they'll check that it's not fake and all that sort of stuff, and they'll authenticate it and grade it and all that sort of stuff, and then sell it to you and sell you on the story that they're there for integrity. Yet when you try and hold them accountable to their own standards, they say, well, guess what? We don't have a guarantee. We don't need to pay out. And it's a really, unfortunate situation, because whilst that is fair and square within their T's and C's and they're well within their right to do what they do, there's sort of like an inherent belief within the hobby that, if you get something graded, you're sort of protected. But that's not the case. That's certainly not the case. And it's something we've talked to many times on the channel. So it's like, what does that mean for us as collectors? When you've got eBay inherently relying on the fact these graders have done their job correctly and not providing any, guarantee over the work of what these graders have done, because they're basically saying, well, these graders have done their job. It is what it is. You need to go talk to them. It's like, that's not an okay outcome. The fact that you can have, in this instance, something get graded by a grading company, a person sees it in that slab and says, you know what, I trust Beckett, I'm going to buy this thing. You're screwed then, because eBay's going to say, you know what, it passes authentication guarantee like it does in this instance. You need to go talk to Beckett. You go talk to Beckett. Beckett say, well, yes, we've made a mistake. We're not going to pay out though. Sorry, we don't have a guarantee. We don't actually have to pay you out. We're not held to that like legally or anything like that. Or they'll say and put their head in the sand, we didn't make a mistake. It's all well and good. Like they've done with that soccer syndicate that I mentioned a little bit earlier, where you had all those stickers that the community knows are fake and all that sort of stuff. And Beckett will still put their head in the sand and say they're not fake. It's just crazy how that can sort of happen. How you can have these companies give us this perception that they're here for integrity and all this kind of stuff, but they don't want to be held, accountable to their own standards. And it's a really concerning thing, in my opinion, long-term for the hobby, because you've basically got all these participants, collectors, businesses, auction houses, everyone's sort of relying on these graders doing their job. And then the buck or the puck, whatever they're saying, just keeps getting moved down the line. If you buy it on PWCC, go talk to Beckett. You go talk to Beckett, you screw. You're not going to get your money back. And I'm repeating myself now, but you guys get the gist of what I'm saying, right? You've basically got people relying and having this expectation about what these companies are there to do. Yet in reality, they're not giving you any comfort at all. So it's like, guys, what are we doing here? It's unacceptable that a mistake like this can happen. And there are significant questions around, how these businesses actually operate. Like, how can this mistake actually happen out of Beckett if it is a mistake? If they confirm it's a mistake, how did it happen? Like, how can you actually have a card of this magnitude get labeled incorrectly like that? When the ramifications are somebody pays, $23,000 that they're now going to be out of pocket for if, you know, the likes of Adam Gray didn't flag it on eBay, if I didn't make a YouTube video and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's, you know, unacceptable. Apologies for coughing, guys. I'm pretty sick, you know, at the moment, but I'm, you know, always keen to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. So, you know, let me know your thoughts. I rambled a lot in this one, but that's just what I wanted to talk to you. You had those 2 updates from the buyer, and obviously that talking point about what this means long-term for the hobby, because I think it's, you know, pretty unacceptable where things are heading. So, you know, as always, guys, share your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.